I want to challenge you right out of the gate today to completely reimagine your entire existence.
Wow. Okay. Starting small today, I see.
I know, I know. A small task for whatever you're doing right now.
Yeah.
But I really want you to set aside the idea of life as this grueling high-stakes test.
Which is how most of us treat it, honestly.
Exactly. And throw out that modern, incredibly popular idea that we're living in some cold computational simulation. You know, the whole theory where we're just arbitrary lines of code grinding through a program.
Right. Yeah.
Instead, what if it's a game? And I don't mean a hyper-competitive winner-takes-all tournament where you have to destroy the opposition.
So not a battle royale.
No, not at all. I mean a game in the older, warmer sense of the word. Think about the way children play. That pure, immersive, joyous play.
Before adults come along and ruin it.
Exactly. Before adults come along and teach them that certain things in the world are far too important and, like, far too serious to be played with. Welcome to today's deep dive. Today we're exploring a fascinating text titled Earth, the Game of Love.
And it is a profound shift in perspective. Moving from viewing life as a proving ground to viewing it as a playground. It immediately changes your relationship with everything that happens to you and, every obstacle you face.
It really does. Our mission today is to explore the rules of this game, understand the clash between the people who play it lightly and those who take it way too seriously, and discover why choosing joy might be the most radical move you can make.
Which is such a great framework, because the text notes that viewing life as a joyous game is actually an ancient theory.
Oh, really? It's not a new concept.
Not at all. But it's one that gets persistently suppressed across human history. It tends to be buried by people who prefer their philosophies to feel, well, weighty and difficult and painful.
Because if it doesn't hurt, it doesn't count. Right?
Exactly. We have this deep-seated assumption in our culture that if something isn't hard or if it doesn't involve profound suffering, it somehow isn't true.
Okay, let's unpack this because the author's premise is so beautifully simple. The text argues that the core object of this game is quite simply love.
Right.
Or, if the word love sounds a little too soft or sentimental for you, it offers alternatives. You can call it peace.
Or if peace sounds too boring, call it bliss.
Yeah, exactly. If bliss is too passive, call it joy. Or honestly, just call it fun. The object of the game is the exact same thing. It's just wearing different costumes depending on what the player prefers.
And what's wild is that the actual point, and the text is crystal clear about this, no footnotes, no caveats, is that you are supposed to be enjoying yourself here.
You are allowed to have fun playing.
Which is remarkably confronting. The notion that enjoyment isn't a byproduct of winning or like a reward for finishing your chores, but the actual point of playing it completely short-circuits how most of us operate.
Well, yeah, because if the point is to have fun, how exactly is this game played? I mean, every game has rules. Monopoly has rules. Basketball has rules.
Even Calvin Ball has rules.
Right. So what are the operational rules of the game of love?
What's fascinating here is how the text explains the game's design. There are rules, sure, but they're unusually light. Light in what way? Like optional.
No, more like they operate much more like the laws of physics than they do like human legislation.
Oh, okay.
Think about gravity. Gravity doesn't have a moral agenda. It doesn't threaten you. It doesn't judge you if you trip. It doesn't hold a grudge.
It just operates.
It just operates. If you drop an apple, it falls. The rules of this game are built into the architecture of reality in that same neutral, mechanical way.
So it's pure cause and effect, not a system of crime and punishment.
Exactly. The text outlines a few of these structural rules. It states that presence naturally generates pleasure. Connection inherently opens things up.
And resistance costs energy.
Right. Resistance fundamentally costs more energy than it saves. These aren't rules you have to memorize to avoid a penalty flag from some referee in the sky. It's simply how the mechanics function. You learn them by interacting with the environment.
Which completely changes how we look at something like exhaustion. There's this line in the text about rest that I cannot stop thinking about.
The mechanism line. Yes. It says, quote, "Rest is not a reward for effort. It is part of the mechanism."
It's such a brilliant way to frame it.
It makes me think of modern video game design, honestly. Like, when you play an RPG, your character has a stamina bar. When you sprint, that stamina depletes.
Right, but you don't have to earn it back.
Exactly. You don't earn your stamina back by doing side chores or feeling sufficiently guilty about being tired. You just stop running for a few seconds, and the bar naturally regenerates. The game is literally designed to keep you equipped to keep playing.
The design is remarkably generous, and that stamina bar analogy captures it perfectly, because the text points out that this game is designed to be won continuously.
Just at the end.
No, you don't just win at the very end of your life, like on your deathbed. And you don't win as some cosmic compensation for a lifetime of misery. You win in the present moment, now, and now, and now. The system is rigged in favor of your recovery and your joy.
Okay, wait, let me push back on that for a second, because that sounds, it borders on toxic positivity.
Sure, I can see that.
If the game is designed to be won continuously, and the mechanics are as generous as a regenerating stamina bar, why does life so often throw us devastating curveballs?
That is the big question.
Right, people get sick, people lose their jobs, hearts get broken. If I'm supposed to be winning now and now and now, how does the text justify treating real pain and sudden tragedies as just part of a generous game?
It's a fair point.
Because to someone in the middle of a crisis, those plot twists feel exactly like punishments.
That is the most common and, frankly, vital critique of this philosophy. And the text does explicitly address the nature of these curveballs. The game has surprises built in, reversals, plot twists, encounters you absolutely did not schedule.
And would never ask for.
Right.
Yeah.
But the text draws a hard line here. These are not punishments. They are not tests in a punitive sense, like some cosmic teacher is trying to fail you.
Or see how much you can endure before breaking.
Exactly. They are simply the texture of play.
Okay, I understand calling a traffic jam texture, but applying that to deeper suffering seems really difficult.
It is difficult. But think about the fundamental nature of any game you actually enjoy playing. If a game is perfectly smooth...
Like, no obstacles.
Yeah, no obstacles, no unexpected variables, no moments where your strategy falls apart. It's not a game anymore, it's just a straight line.
You'd stop playing out of sheer boredom.
Precisely. Playing tic-tac-toe against someone who just lets you win every time is agonizing. The friction isn't there to stop you from enjoying the game. The friction is the very thing that makes the game engaging.
Without the unexpected, there's no depth.
Exactly.
Okay, but if the architecture is this generous, and even the severe obstacles are just there to provide necessary friction, why is the world full of people who are absolutely miserable? It seems like a lot of people aren't experiencing the game this way at all.
This naturally leads us into the text's concept of the people who cannot play lightly. The text refers to them as the serious players.
Serious in quotes.
Right, and it's very careful to define this. It's not talking about normal responsibility. Having a serious demeanor or caring about your work or taking your obligations to others seriously is not the issue.
So what is the issue?
The problem is a very specific, dangerous type of seriousness. Players who take the game so intensely seriously that they suffer total amnesia. They completely forget they're playing a game.
They forget they are in a playground and convince themselves they're in a courtroom.
That's a great way to put it. They take this beautiful, physics-based game of love and turn it into a rigid, daily performance review.
Wow, a performance review.
Yeah. They confuse the natural, mechanical rules of the game with the iron bars of a cage. And because they've locked themselves inside this conceptual cage, they lose all access to their own spontaneous joy.
And when someone loses their own joy, they almost inevitably start policing the enjoyment of all the other players around them, don't they?
Oh, universally.
The author describes these serious players using imagery that is just uncomfortably recognizable. It describes people who collect grievances the way other people collect rare stamps.
The grievance collectors, yes.
We all know someone like this. They don't just experience a passing annoyance and let it go. They have, like, intricate mental organizational systems for their resentments.
They document everything.
Everything. Every time they were wronged, every time a coworker slighted them, every unspoken expectation that wasn't met, they dedicate genuine, passionate energy to building this collection until the archive of grievances becomes the entire point of their life.
And the text makes a crucial psychological observation here. These people are not villains. We shouldn't look at them as malicious enemies.
They're just lost.
Exactly. They are just players who are profoundly lost in the weeds of their own minds, operating under a tragic delusion.
But practically speaking, what does this mean for the rest of us? Let's say you're trying to be a light player. You're trying to experience joy and let your stamina regenerate.
Right.
If someone else wants to spend their one wild and precious life collecting grievance stamps in their own private, miserable cage, why can't we just let them? Like, why does their amnesia matter to my gameplay?
Because they rarely stay quietly in their own cages. The text identifies the true, tangible harm caused by these serious players, and it isn't their personal suffering.
Because suffering is available to everyone anyway. You don't have to be a grievance collector to suffer.
Exactly. The real harm, the destructive element, is what the text calls conscription.
Conscription, like drafting someone into a war against their will.
Precisely that. Serious players don't just suffer in isolation, they actively make other people responsible for the administration of their suffering.
Oh, wow.
They drag light players out of their own state of play and force them to engage with the bars of the cage. Think about a family dinner where one person is just radiating resentment.
Yeah, they aren't just having a bad time. They're requiring everyone else at the table to tiptoe around them.
Right, to manage their emotions and validate their unspoken grievances. They interrupt your game to make you service theirs.
That is a phenomenal way of describing a toxic dynamic that is usually so hard to articulate. They pull you out of play to administer their distress. When you get conscripted like that, it creates this profound misunderstanding between the two types of players.
Oh, a massive disconnect. The serious player and the light player are looking at the exact same situation, but seeing entirely different realities.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When a serious player drags a light player into their drama, the serious player almost universally assumes they are the deeper, more profound person in the room.
Simply because they're carrying so much emotional weight.
Yes, they mistake heaviness for depth. And the text offers this brilliant metaphor to dismantle that. It says, a stone is heavy, water is deep. You can drown in water, you cannot drown in a stone.
That is such a powerful image.
I love it. A stone is heavy, water is deep. It perfectly illustrates how the serious players view the world. They look at the light players, the water, and view that lightness as a fundamental flaw.
Yes, this is what the author terms the asymmetry of lightness. The heavy player looks at someone buoyant and joyful and interprets it as immaturity or denial.
Like what pop psychology calls spiritual bypassing.
Exactly. To the heavy stone, if you aren't agonizing over every detail, you must just be ignoring reality. They literally cannot fathom that someone might be light, not out of ignorance, but because they've actually looked at the darkness.
The light player has fully understood the suffering in the world, seen the tragic plot twists, and consciously decided the game is still worth playing.
Right. The serious players are standing at the edge of the map, endlessly arguing with each other about whether the territory is safe to enter, while the light players are already miles downstream navigating the rapids.
Let's dig into the mechanics of that, because it seems counterintuitive. How do light players manage to navigate reality more effectively if they aren't treating every obstacle with heavy, analytical seriousness? I mean, we're taught that taking things seriously is the only way to pay attention to them.
Well, the text explains this beautifully through the concept of cognitive processing power. If we use a modern analogy, think of your brain's capacity like a computer's RAM.
Okay, RAM.
The serious players, the heavy ones, are deeply and constantly defended. They're running dozens of background programs at all times to manage hypothetical threats, index their past grievances, scan conversations for slights.
And fiercely defend their ego.
Yes, and running all those defensive programs costs a massive amount of processing power.
So they have virtually no RAM left to actually render the world in front of them.
Their bandwidth is maxed out by their own defenses. The light players, conversely, are less defended. Because their primary orientation is love or joy, they aren't wasting vital energy managing hypothetical threats.
Or curating a museum of past wrongs.
Exactly. And that surplus energy doesn't just disappear, it goes directly into perception. They have more processing power available to actually observe reality as it is.
So lowered defenses do not mean a lack of awareness?
No, by dropping the heavy armor, they gain a heightened, highly accurate perception of their environment.
Which explains why being a light player around a serious player is so uniquely exhausting. You're seeing the world clearly, and they are constantly misreading you. This brings up a section of the text that hit me incredibly hard.
The exhaustion part.
Yes, it describes the specific drain of being taken seriously for the wrong things.
It is a very specific psychological fatigue. A serious player will take everything you do, no matter how innocent, and run it through their internal filter of pathology.
Right, you make a completely casual joke, and because they're running those defensive programs, they analyze your joke as a revelation of some deep psychological flaw.
Or a hidden agenda. And if you express spontaneous joy, they view it with intense suspicion. In their framework, joy must be earned through suffering.
So unearned joy is seen as an act of theft.
Or deception, yes.
The absolute heartbreak of this dynamic is what happens to the actual love and care that the light player is offering. The text points out that the genuine presence you offer the patients, the warmth becomes completely invisible to the heavy player. The author says you become the furniture of the relationship, not its contents.
It's a devastating image, and it perfectly captures the reality of conscription. You become a comfortable chair they sit in every single day. They rely on your support, but they take it completely for granted.
They don't even notice you're there holding them up.
But the second you don't match their internal map of how things should be, the moment the chair is an inch out of place, that is the only thing they see.
You're perceived entirely through the lens of what you withhold, and never for the vast territory of what you actually provide.
This sounds incredibly draining. I mean, the text calls it the exhaustion of being consistently misread by someone who is very confident in their reading.
It is exhausting.
So how does a light player survive this without giving up, building their own cage, and turning into a heavy stone themselves just to survive? Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where we find the structural good news of the game's design. The most important physics rule to remember is this: the game does not end just because someone else is playing it badly.
Oh, that's good.
Your individual capacity for love isn't diminished simply because your love is being misunderstood. Your access to peace doesn't require a consensus from the people around you. Bliss isn't a conditional reward dispensed only when a serious player applauds your efforts.
It's the quiet radicalism of playing lightly. You don't have to perform your joy to prove the serious player's wrong. You don't have to announce you're having fun.
And you don't need them to sign a permission slip agreeing that you're allowed to be happy. You just continue.
The water continues to flow down the river and carve the canyon, regardless of how stubbornly the heavy stones are sitting in the mud claiming the river doesn't exist.
Exactly. The text urges you not to forget the game just because they did. The people who forgot it's a game are not evidence that the game is broken. They're just evidence of how persuasive forgetting can be.
So if you look at all of this, the generous architecture, the grievance collectors, the metaphor of the water and the stone, it really boils down to one fundamental question. The text says this question sits quietly at the very bottom of every single conflict between a light player and a serious player.
It is the defining question of the text. Do you believe you are allowed to be happy here?
It sounds so simple, but the answers dictate your entire reality.
They really do. The serious players, locked in their cages, almost always answer that question with a deferred or highly conditional yes.
Like, happiness is something you only access after all the work is done.
Right, after all the debts are paid. Peace is for after you've solved every problem. Joy is a luxury for people who haven't looked closely enough at how broken the world is. It requires constant justification.
But the light players have a completely different answer. And as we've explored, it's not a naive answer born from ignoring the bad stuff. The answer is just yes.
Unconditionally, right now, in this exact moment, regardless of the circumstances, on a planet that literally chose love as its core mechanic, yes.
And the beautiful thing about the physics of this game is that when you consistently offer that unconditional yes, the environment responds.
The game keeps generating more things for you to say yes to.
I love that. And, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about your day. Something that builds on everything we've just unpacked. We talked earlier about how the game's architecture is explicitly designed to include surprises, reversals, and plot twists.
That necessary texture of play.
Right, the texture that keeps the game engaging. Well, consider this. What if those incredibly serious people in your life, the ones who constantly misunderstand you, who treat your genuine care like invisible furniture, who try to drag you into their cages, what if they aren't actually obstacles to your joy at all?
Oh, that is a fascinating reframe.
What if those heavy players are simply unexpected plot twists designed by the game itself? Not to punish you, and certainly not to validate their worldview, but to test just how deeply and radically you can commit to your own lightness.
To see if you can remain fluid, like water, even when surrounded by heavy stones.
Because the point isn't to merely survive a cold simulation. The point is to play a game. The warm, vibrant, wildly surprising kind of game you already knew how to play long before the world told you to stop. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go out there, enjoy the texture of the twists, keep playing the game, and whatever you do, play it lightly.